Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. This is the last BOOKMAS video for the month, and I can't believe we're already at the end of December, but here we are. And today we'll be going over a few different things. I do have some new books that I wanted to share, so it's kind of like a mini book haul. And then I did want to just talk a little bit about the books that I read in the second half of December that I didn't get a chance to talk about yet. So it's just a little bit of a wrap up, a mini book haul, and I just wanted to wrap up the reading year, 2024. We're already at the end of the year, which is absolutely insane. And I'm just so excited to talk about some reading statistics and how the year went in general, talk about the books I read in the second half of the month, and share a mini book haul. We're first going to go over just a few reading statistics for 2024. This year I read a lot less than in the previous few years, and it was intentional. I did want to kind of slow down because I believe in 2021, 2, and 3, I read over 200 books, which is insane. And it was a little on the unhealthy side for me, but everyone reads at a different pace. Everyone's reading is a little different, and no judgment if you read a lot of books. I still think for the number I read this year, it's still a lot. And for some people, it's insane. So everyone's different. It's completely fine how few books you read, how many books you read, it doesn't matter. But this year I read 125. I am almost finished with one book, so it will probably be 126. And something that made me very, very happy is my average rating for 2024. It is 4.1. And in previous years it was lower, and I feel like that's because I was pushing myself to read books I wasn't enjoying, and this year I really embraced DNFing. So 4.1 stars as an average is really, really great. I'm really happy with that. And I will also share just a picture here that shows how many books I gave 5 stars and 4 stars. The 4-star ones, I also include 3.5. So if I give a book like a 3.5 star, I'll round it up to 4. And I did also talk about how I'm not really huge on numerical readings, but the reason I still use them is because it helps me keep track on Goodreads, and that's why I find it useful. But in general, I'm not huge on number ratings. You can see the shortest book I read was The 11th Metal by Brandon Sanderson. It's a short story. And then the longest was Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset, which is technically 3 books, but I read the full volume that has the 3. I do wish Goodreads had more statistics in terms of like genres and all of that. So I may start using Storygraph just for the stats portion of keeping track of my reading, which I really like. I like statistics. I never really talk about them on my channel. I don't know if you find that interesting, but I just never share my reading statistics other than what I read and what I rated the book. But now we'll just go over the books I read in December. I'll quickly mention the ones I already talked about in my mid-month wrap-up, and if you haven't seen that wrap-up, I'll have it linked below. There are a lot of festive reads that I talked about in that wrap-up, and the majority of what I read in December, I read in the first half. Things got really busy as we were getting closer to Christmas, so less books in the second half, and unfortunately less enjoyable than in the first half. But in the first half, I read The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, The Further Chronicles of Avonlea by Ella Montgomery, The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and Slashing Through the Snow by Jacqueline Frost, Old Christmas by Washington Irving, Spectacular by Stephanie Garber, Jane and the 12 Days of Christmas by Stephanie Barron, The Christmas Hirelings by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, and A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So we'll now go over what I read in the second half. I do have one DNF to talk about, and that is Miracle on 34th Street, and that's by Valentine Davies. And this one, I just got to a point where I was really, really burned out of Christmas reads. I read so many Christmassy stories in the first half of December, and I just could not get into this and needed to change things up. It was just too much. As much as I love Christmas, I adore it so much, my reading mood was just shifting. So this one I will try to pick up next Christmas, and it's not that I wasn't enjoying it. I thought it was really sweet, but I may see the movie first and then go from there. But that is unfortunately a DNF. I also read Christmas at Thompson Hall by Anthony Trollope. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road 3-star short story or novella. I don't really remember how long it is, but it's kind of like a comedy of errors. And our main character, Mrs. Brown, and her husband, they're on their way to Thompson Hall to spend Christmas with family. But on the way, while at a hotel, Mrs. Brown makes this mistake. She gets some mustard plaster to put on her husband's chest as he's not feeling well, but she ends up accidentally going into the wrong hotel room and putting it on the chest of a man who's not her husband. It was dark, so she wasn't seeing properly, and the numbers on the door, she thought it was her room, and the story goes from there. It's really, really silly. The reason why I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to, I had expectations that it would be set at Thompson Hall and would be very, very Christmassy, and it definitely was not. It was mostly set at this hotel, and the couple, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, their interactions with like the hotel porter and then the man that Mrs. Brown accidentally put the plaster on. But anyways, I just went in with expectations that were not met, and as a result, I didn't enjoy it all that much. I also read Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor by Rosanna M. White, and I did enjoy the story. I gave it like a 3.5 to 4 stars. I honestly have already forgotten so much about the story, and that's the thing with some stories by Rosanna M. White. Some of them I love and they're written so well and they're memorable, but this one, it was fine. It wasn't anything super special for me. I enjoyed it, but I'm already forgetting the characters' names. I'm just forgetting a lot of what happened. So to Goodreads we go. It says, as the beloved stepdaughter of the Earl of Castleton, Lady Maria cherishes her home at Plumford Manor, but her idyllic world will be threatened when the estate passes to Cyril Lightbourne, a childhood friend she hasn't seen or heard from in years. Once, Maria dreamed their old friendship would kindle into something more, but that was before she heard that Cyril was courting the cruel-hearted Lady Pearl. Now Maria is willing to welcome him as a friend and pray he'll finally be the heir her stepfather needs, but she'll keep her heart locked safely away from anyone with such poor taste. Due to misunderstandings, Cyril Lightbourne has long avoided returning to Plumford Manor, yet he reluctantly arrives in time for Christmas. When his friendship with Lady Maria reignites, he finds himself torn between his affection for her and her family's distance towards him because of Lady Pearl, a woman he'd rather forget. Then more trouble arrives in the form of a Danish lord on a mission to win Maria's hand by Christmas, and to disgrace Cyril in the process. Inspired by the Nutcracker, this Edwardian-era historical romance is a tale of holiday spirit, love, and the power of family and friendship from Rosanna M. White, best-selling author. So I liked it. Like I was saying, I did expect it to be more a retelling of the Nutcracker than it actually was. That was just an expectation I went in with. And it was more inspired by elements of the Nutcracker, not really a retelling. I like that it was set in the Edwardian era. It's one of my favorite time periods to read about, but I just didn't really care for our main character, Maria. I found her to be very typical in terms of what I see in Christian romances, Christian fiction. I don't know, it was very familiar, and Cyril was fine, but I definitely liked Soren, the Danish prince, a lot more, and his story. Maria's sister was also a really fascinating character, and I honestly wish the story focused more on them. I think the predictability of the story also made it harder for me to really enjoy it, because it's kind of easy to know where the story is going to go. It's not to say a predictable story is a bad story. I enjoy many books that are predictable in terms of the plot, especially with romance. They are predictable for a reason. But yeah, I thought the story was fine, not an all-time favorite, but definitely enjoyable for the Christmas season, and I would recommend it. I also read A Boy Called Christmas by Matt Haig, and I really enjoyed this one as well. It's probably like a 3.5 to 4 star read as well. It's enjoyable, but I didn't absolutely adore it. But in this one, we have a young boy named Nicholas, and his father goes missing while he's on a mission to the North Pole for the king. And he decides to go and try to find his father, and along the way he meets some really interesting characters. He meets some elves. In this village where the elves live, they are under this new leadership, and he is very anti-Christmas and anti-joy and all of that. And so Nicholas is on this mission to kind of bring about change in this elf town and also find his father, and the story goes from there. He meets this reindeer along the way and some other fun characters. And there are also some beautiful illustrations in this story. I loved the illustrations so much. Here's just one here. They're so beautifully done. Here's another full page illustration. The illustrations definitely made the reading experience a lot more fun. Here's just one more full page illustration. If it wasn't for the illustrations, this would probably be like a 3-star read. I found the storyline to be a little interesting. Not my favorite, but I did like our main character, Nicholas. I thought he was a really sweet character. And there were definitely some funny moments in the story, but the humor was a little, I don't know, out of place maybe, and the story was a little darker than I was expecting. It just was kind of odd. I really don't know what other word to use other than odd. A little bit of an odd story, but still fun, a great Christmas read, and I'm glad I read it. I don't think I'll continue the series. I am perfectly fine with having just read this one. The writing style wasn't my absolute favorite, so yeah, I thought this was quite odd, but still fun. Now, my favorite read from the second half of December was Letters from Father Christmas by Tolkien. This was just precious. This was a reread. I read it, I believe, last Christmas or the Christmas before. And basically every year, Tolkien would write letters to his children as Father Christmas, and he did some beautiful illustrations as well. And everything about these letters is just so precious. Here's just an example of one of the letters. And at different points in the letters, we have the North Polar Bear, who also shares some things, and he's hilarious, such a funny character. There's just another illustration there. But these are absolutely precious. I believe it starts off in 1920, with Tolkien's oldest son, John. And the very last letter in the collection was written in 1943 to Tolkien's youngest child, Priscilla. And it's so poignant. It was obviously World War II, so just certain things that Father Christmas said in the letter really tug at your heartstrings. And it's kind of sad to see how, as the years go by and the kids are older and go off to school, how Father Christmas doesn't write letters to them anymore because they're too old. And I don't know, that just kind of makes me sad. But I love this collection so much. It is so precious. I just love that Tolkien made such an effort with these for his kids, and it is the most precious thing. I adore these letters so much. I did mention that my mood was kind of shifting away from Christmas reads, so I decided to pick up the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. And this one was fine. I talked about Agatha Christie in my least favorite reads of the year video, and I had mentioned that I'm just reading a lot more books of hers that are fine. They're nothing really special, and I'm kind of worried that I've read all her really good ones and I'm just reading mediocre mysteries, and it's making me kind of sad. This one's another middle of the road read. I thought it was fine. The intro was interesting. We have this potential serial killer who is targeting people by the alphabet. So the first victor's name was Mrs. Archer, and then the second one was Betty. The third one was Sir Carmichael, so he's kind of going by letter in the alphabet. And Poirot and Hastings are trying to figure out what's going on. I think my reading tastes have just been changing a lot, and the way that Agatha Christie writes her stories, it's not always very engaging for me specifically, in my tastes and everything, and I'm finding myself a lot more annoyed with Poirot. I used to always say Poirot was my favorite more than Miss Marple, but I don't know, just lately that's been changing, and I feel with Poirot and just detective-led whodunits in particular, I'm less inclined to enjoy them. I'm finding that I like a lot more, I guess, amateur sleuths investigating murders and everything than a detective. And another thing I don't like is that Poirot has so much that he's just keeping in his mind and he's not sharing with the reader. And by the time we get to the resolution, it's like, okay, Poirot saw all these things, I didn't. Here's the resolution. You're just gonna have to take it. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's definitely a me problem. This book has very high praise, and everything is subjective when it comes to reading tastes, and I still don't really understand why this just didn't work for me, but that is the ABC Murders. I actually completely forgot. I DNF'd another Agatha Christie this month and forgot to mention it, but I think that was taken at the Flood, and that one I DNF'd a few chapters in. I was very bored. And then I saw some reviews saying the epilogue completely ruins the story, so I just don't really care to read it, but I really hope things get better. This makes me very sad because I started off on such a bang with Agatha Christie. I read so many wonderful books by her that I just loved, and a few of my favorite mysteries of all time are written by Agatha Christie. So here's to hoping that there are some wonderful books out there just waiting to be read, and hopefully I'll have some more 5-star favorite Agatha Christie books, because I've been really discouraged lately by a lot of the books I've been reading by her. So those were the books that I finished in December, and I'll quickly mention the books that I'm currently reading. So I did start Middlemarch and had talked about the fact that I'm reading this in the way that it was released serially. So the first volume, Miss Brooke, I'm reading over December and January, and gonna take my time with this over the next year. And I'm really enjoying it so far. I was taken aback just because the only George Eliot book I've read is Silas Marner, and I didn't really care for it. But I'm really enjoying this book, and I'm already tabbing it up like crazy. I am learning so much about the Reform Act in 1832, so much I didn't know about that history and everything, so really enjoying this. And I like our main character, Dorothea Brooke, so far. I've heard, though, that she is not the only main character, and that later on in the story, we're introduced to a lot more characters, so I'm really curious to see how that's gonna go, but I'm very much enjoying this. I also started The Keeper of Hidden Books by Madeline Martin. I had this on my winter pile of possibilities, and was kind of in the mood for a World War II historical fiction. I'm overall enjoying it. It's set in Poland during the Second World War, and our main character, Zofia, is a huge lover of literature. And of course, when the Nazis come in, a lot of books end up banned, and she's trying to save as many books as she can. There have been bombs that have been destroying libraries and that kind of thing. And it says, as Warsaw creeps closer towards liberation, Zofia must fight to save her friend and preserve her culture and community using the only weapon they have left, literature. So I'm really enjoying it so far, like I was saying, and we'll talk about it more when I finished it. Also reading The Last Chronicle of Barset by Anthony Trollope. I am on page 142 and really enjoying it as well. It's quite slow paced, at least right now, so we'll see kind of how the rest of the story goes, but I am really enjoying it so far. It deals with Mr. Crawley, who is a rector, and he is accused of theft, and it's intense. A lot of things are happening, so I'm really curious to see how the story continues. I also started A Seaside Wonder by Melissa Tagg, which is book 2 in the Muir Harbor series, and am thoroughly enjoying it so far. I've been tabbing it up. I just love the series, so also reading that one. I'm absolutely insane. I think I'm in the middle of like 8 books right now, but I have continued reading Tennyson's major works. I had set this aside for a while and picked it back up, and I'm currently in the middle of his really long poem, The Princess, and I'm loving it so much. It is a narrative poem, and we have basically this summer party going on in the Victorian era, and one of the characters' friends is asked to tell a story, and so he tells the story of a princess and a prince, and the princess is this fiercely independent woman who doesn't want to marry the prince anymore. They're betrothed, but she doesn't want to marry him. She opens up this university that's only for women, and it's really fun so far. Really interesting, and has some really interesting themes, but when I finished it, I'll talk more about it. And I've also started several books for Epistolary January because I couldn't help myself, and I want to read as many books as I can in January, even though in my reading goals video I said low pressure and slowing down is really the goal of 2025. But for Epistolary January, I'm going to try to read as much as I can. There are so many books I want to read, some that are not epistolary as well, so we'll see how January goes. But I did start Divine Rivals. This one I am reading for a few different prompts, but I'm rereading this one so then I can read Ruthless Vows afterwards, just because I forgot a lot of what goes on in this book. So rereading Divine Rivals. I also picked up the Selected Journals of Ella Montgomery. This is the first volume, and it starts off when Ella Montgomery is, I think, 14. So far I've really enjoyed her journal entries. I found some of them to be hilarious, and it's just so fun to see the different characters that Ella Montgomery has written reflected in her own person, her own personality. I love that so much. I've seen little snippets of Anne and Emily, and it's just so fun. So I'm really enjoying this. Also for Epistolary January, as they are journal entries. And I also started The Visits of Elizabeth by Eleanor Glynn, and it's also for Epistolary January. This one is all letters from our main character Elizabeth to her mother, and she's just visiting family and telling her mother about the goings on. And I've read the first few letters so far, and they are hilarious. So funny. It is completely fictional, so these are not real letters, but this one I believe was written in 1900, so it's right at the end of the Victorian era, and I'm very much enjoying it. So to end off the video, I'm just going to quickly share a very small book haul. These are all books I got after the book haul I shared right at the beginning of December, my birthday book haul. I got these all afterwards, and I think this is going to be the last book haul for a while. I am definitely going on a book buying ban for at least January. We'll see how long I can extend that. I need to really slow down on the book buying. But this first book here is Wordsworth and Coleridge's Lyrical Ballads from 1798 and 1802. And I've seen many people recommend reading this alongside Middlemarch because George Eliot references Wordsworth and Coleridge quite a bit. And there is inspiration in Middlemarch from the Romantic period in terms of literature. So Wordsworth and Coleridge, they were huge in the Romantic period, and I am already really enjoying it. I read part of the very first poem, which is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner in 7 parts, and I really like the style, and I've been going crazy with highlighting and underlining and writing notes. I'm really enjoying it so far, and will be slowly making my way through this as I read Middlemarch. And yeah, I am very excited to continue this, and it's also such a beautiful cover. I love that pastoral scene. I love this so much. So That is Wordsworth and Coleridge's Ballads. My sister found me this copy of Little Women at a thrift store, and it is in perfect condition, like it's never been read. And I love Little Women. I would love to collect as many editions as I can. So that is this beautiful Signet Classic edition of Little Women, and I love that cover so much. I did get a couple books for Epistolary January. The first one is Henrietta's War, and I don't even know where I put it. It arrived in the mail, and I don't know where I put it. But it is a copy that I got off of Abe Books. It's a used copy, and every other copy I found of this book was so expensive, and it was just cheaper for me to get this used copy than to get like the audiobook on Audible. So I got Henrietta's War, and I also got Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster. This is going to be read in January. It is at the very top of my to be read list. So that is Daddy Longlegs. I also received Pharaoh's Daughter by Georgette Hare from Anne. Thank you so much, Anne, for this book. I'm so excited. I love Georgette Hare so much. I don't know what it's about, but I don't want to know too much going in. But I'm very excited to add to my Georgette Hare collection. So thank you again to Anne. A book that I actually want to read for Anne's Read the Classics Challenge for the month of January is Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I've never read anything by this author, but have heard that this is a really great book to read in the winter. And I mean, the cover is pretty wintry as well. So I'm really hopeful that I'll get to this in January, and it's very short as well. So very likely that I will. The font isn't even very small. So I think this will be a really quick read, but that is Ethan Frome. My grandma actually got me Shield of the Mighty for Christmas by Connie Lynn Cassette. This is the second book in the King's Men. I think it's a series. I think a third book is coming out, but I have yet to read the first book. I do own it, but after I read it, I'll continue on with the second book. I may actually wait until the third book is out just because I like reading series back to back, but I'm very excited to have this as well. And I love Connie Lynn Cassette, and that is also such a beautiful cover. So this is a beautiful gift from my grandma. And last but not least, I've already talked about the Iliad by Homer, and I talked about this in my reading goals for 2025 video. And so I plan on starting this in January, but I'm definitely taking my time with this one. And I'm reading it because I'm doing this course through Hillsdale College. It's a fully free online course called Great Books 101 from the ancients to the medieval period. And this is the first book you're supposed to read, and then you watch a video lecture on it. So I'm really excited but nervous, but I've heard amazing things about Emily Wilson and her translation and everything. So that is the Iliad, and that is the final book that I have to haul. And it will probably be the last for a while. That's the goal, at least, is to kind of go on a book buying ban. But friends, that is it for this video. I just wanted to share how my reading year went in 2024, the books that I finished in the second half of December, as well as some books that I've purchased and received this month. It's been such a wonderful year, so many wonderful books that I've read, and I hope it was a wonderful year for you as well. But friends, that is it for BOOKMAS. That is my last video of December, and I'll probably take the first 2 weeks in January just off from filming, but we'll definitely have some videos coming out in the latter half of January. But friends, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.